Hi there class, and welcome to our flipped classroom on respiration and photosynthesis. Today we'll be looking at the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide through both the process of photosynthesis and cellular respiration, and we'll be looking at how the cycle works in terms of the Earth's environment and why it's such an essential process for human and animal life on the Earth. So we're looking at organelles last lesson. So we're looking at both plant and animal cells. Within a plant cell, the chloroplasts, the green structures that have the chlorophyll, are responsible for photosynthesis. And within the animal cells and also plant cells, respiration is controlled largely by the mitochondria. These cells control the respiration process. So let me just first of all start by explaining photosynthesis in words. It'd be great during this time if you are taking notes and looking at the different points I'm putting up and summarising them in your own workbooks, and then we'll have a picture later on to help explain things for those who prefer pictures. So the basic idea of photosynthesis is that plants use that chemical reaction. It's a chemical reaction that we've looked at in our chemistry unit, and it turns carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, uses that and water, which it draws, the plants draw through their roots, and turns into glucose, which is food, plant food, as well as food for animals that eat the plants, and produces oxygen, and it sends that oxygen back into the atmosphere. Plants are able to feed themselves, and photosynthesis is the method in which plants do that. So the glucose the plants produce is for the plants to eat, just as much as it is for us and other animals to eat. As I said before, the chloroplasts, the green structures inside plant cells, they're filled with chlorophyll, making them green. They're responsible for photosynthesis. Ultimately, like all things on Earth, we need the sun, and sunlight, or the energy from light, is the energy source we need for photosynthesis to occur. Just having carbon dioxide and water will not start the chemical reaction. We need the sunlight as an energy source to allow that reaction to occur. So as I said before, plants take carbon dioxide from the air, so draws in carbon dioxide through the chemical reaction process, outputs oxygen, which is obviously essential for life. So plants are constantly drawing in carbon dioxide, processing the carbon dioxide with water, and creating glucose and outputting oxygen. That's the key photosynthetic reaction. So here's a bit of a picture for you. So we've got a tree sitting there in the countryside there. So we've got sunlight beating down from the sun. That's the most important part. We've got water, groundwater, underneath, and the roots of the tree draw that water up. The tree draws in carbon dioxide from the air. The air has got all sorts of different gases in it. It's a mixture. Remember our chemical unit, so it's a mixture, and carbon dioxide is one product in the air. Through this, it outputs oxygen back into the air and produces glucose, which it feeds itself with. So the equation, word equation, so I'd very much like it if you would write this word equation down, because it's just part of the syllabus and you need to know this. So the reactants, which are the things that react together in a chemical reaction, remember this is a chemical reaction. It's carbon dioxide and water. Energy, which is sunlight, produces products, glucose and oxygen. If you need more time, you can pause the video now to write that into your workbooks, please. So respiration. Respiration is sort of the opposite reaction. You can consider it that way to photosynthesis, and it works in a cycle, and I'll show you why. So again, take notes here as you need to. Pause the video if you need to take these points down. So plants and animals both use respiration, because respiration is the process where glucose is turned into energy. And we all need energy. We know we need energy. If you're having a flat day, it's because you haven't got enough energy. We all know that process in our bodies is required for us to live. Plants and animals both use respiration. So respiration pulls oxygen out of the atmosphere, so we breathe it in. Plants also breathe, uses glucose, combines it with oxygen, and it outputs, the outputs of the reaction are carbon dioxide, water, and that energy that we need. Without the energy, our cells, all the little tiny cells that make our body up, would all die. So the reaction in terms of the gases is taking oxygen out and putting carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere. So if you remember, photosynthesis was the other way around. It draws carbon dioxide out of the air and outputs oxygen, and respiration draws oxygen out of the air and puts carbon dioxide back. So it's a cycle. And in our cellular structures, both plants and animals, the mitochondria is what controls respiration. Little picture again, we've got a nice little animal now, a deer. So the deer eats the glucose that the tree has produced through photosynthesis. Also draws in oxygen just by breathing. It outputs, as you breathe out, when you are breathing out carbon dioxide, and it produces energy so the animal can live and all its bodily functions work. So the word equation, again, pause the video and you need to write this into your workbooks. The reactants of the equation for respiration are glucose and oxygen, and that produces carbon dioxide, gas, and water, and energy. So the energy is obviously the energy we need for life, often called ATP, if you hear someone use that term, ATP. So remember our cellular structure. There's another picture of a cycle. That funny C6H12O6, that's just another word for glucose, oxygen coming into the mitochondria for respiration, outputting carbon dioxide and water. The chloroplasts of the plant pull in light energy from the sun and that carbon dioxide and water, and photosynthesizes that and creates glucose and oxygen, which then comes back in, and so on the cycle goes. So you may have noticed that already, that there is a cycle there. So ultimately though, it's very important to realize the energy from the sun is the thing that makes the whole process start to work. Without that, we would not have photosynthesis and therefore we would not have respiration. So back to our little picture, just to summarize all of this together. So photosynthesis and respiration, we have our tree here, we have our animal, and don't forget we often stand to the side, humans, and we eat the animal, so the process continues up the food cycle. We get our sunlight from the sun hitting the tree, we get our water that the tree draws in, carbon dioxide from the atmosphere comes into the tree's now got the reactants it needs to photosynthesize, which produces glucose. It also produces oxygen. So that's the first part of the cycle. Now a little deer comes along and starts eating the tree. It's breathing oxygen while it's doing that. It's eating the glucose from the tree. It is outputting energy, so it continues to live. And it's also breathing out carbon dioxide. And that carbon dioxide is then pulled back into the tree, producing oxygen, and that cycle continues. The tree also has respiration too. So at night time when the sun is not shining, the tree is also using oxygen from the air to use its glucose to produce energy for its cells to grow. So the tree also respirates just like the animal. So just a summary of this lesson. Photosynthesis and cellular respiration are related. You can explain how in your workbooks to summarize that. The chloroplast of plant cells is where photosynthesis occurs. Respiration, cellular respiration, occurs in the mitochondria organelle of plants and animal cells. Again, if you're not familiar with those terms, look them up on your worksheets that we did earlier. If you see an arrow in a chemical reaction, which we've covered before, it's a production. So these things produce something. So it's just a reminder in a chemical reaction of word equations, the red arrow or any sort of arrow says these reactants produce these products. And remember in photosynthesis and respiration, it's a cycle. So things produce the photosynthesis produces things that are used up in respiration, which produces things which are used again in photosynthesis, and the cycle continues around and around. Hope you've enjoyed the lesson. Please go back over it again if you need to, take notes, and then I'll hand out a worksheet to go with the PowerPoint. Thanks for listening.